the thing I was saying about commitment, right? That's part of the problem, is when you're using commitment to make yourself do what you don't think you will do. Part of that is you voice it to other people so that they will keep you accountable, because you'll feel so embarrassed if you don't do it that all falls to shit when you realize you're feeling your thing. Mm-hmm. Like that as a strategy works okay inside of a world where our feelings come from outside of us. It stops working. So it's a strategy that even when we see it work, well, it's working at a certain level of consciousness. And if we're not in that level of consciousness, it's not going to work for us the same way. And so there's what I've learned to do, and I know Messiv and I have talked about this and I've shared it, but is I've learned to create space so that things can get created into that space. Not because I want space as for its own sake. Now that's where I am right now. Now if you talk to me in a year, I don't know if that's what I'll be doing. But that, at the level of understanding I have now, that works really well for me. Mm. Opening up space, and then, boy, things always come to fill it.
Mm. Oh, that makes perfect sense. So I'm going to take advantage of what you said to make another point. So I liked what you said, but I'm going to use it to make a more general point, if that's okay. If it's not, I'm going to do it anyway.
So that makes sense if you were here on Thursday.
Okay. There's a way in which you know that relationship to thought thing that you brought up. That's why I'm using your point. Well, it can go either way, in the sense that if you think there is a way, a system, a responsibility to do something right, you're going to get into limitations. You won't have freedom in your relationship to thought, because you'll be accountable to whatever system of assessment you set up, right? And the principles can be used that way. Or I should be in a clear state of mind. I have to see that it's just thought. I can't get committed to a thought. In my world, the idea of the principles is to point to the complete freedom you have on earth. To use thought, relate to thought, use this power of mind, stomp all over it with your own personal thinking, go this way, go that way, indulge, ruminate, stress, love, laugh, enjoy, let go, hang on. It's complete freedom. Nobody's watching. You know how they have that thing? Dance like no one's looking, laugh like that. Well, that's already true. Think like no one's watching. Nobody's watching you think. Nobody cares how you do it, right? And there's a way in which that part's, like, even all of us get lost from that part. Oh, I should be in a clear state of mind, or I should do it this way, or I should do it that way. And there's that feeling of like, oh, it's all thought. And that you can't stop that energy of life forming into thought, so you don't miss it. It's always coming around, it's always coming around, it's always coming around. Like that old Seinfeld skit where he says, when I was a kid, my mum used to make such a big deal about spoiling my appetite. She didn't know there's another one comes along in a minute. So sometimes I'll just ruin it for fun. Just before dinner, I'll get a cookie and I'll eat it just to spoil my appetite. And I'll call my mum up and I'll say, hey mum, guess what I just did? Spoiled my appetite. But there'll be another one along in a minute. And it's that feeling of freedom that you're looking, that I think is a nice implication of the principles. So like I catch myself making a system out of it, and then I start to feel limited and accountable to that system. I'm like, hold on a second, this doesn't feel right. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Okay, great. Because that freedom opens up that space that Michael talked about for potential, for new thought. So instead of saying, oh, I should use the principles this way or that way, you're like, well, nobody knows. Who knows? That's all made up. That's a space. That's what a space is. A space is your head when it doesn't feel accountable to thought.
Look at your badges for a minute. Look at what it says under Supercoach Academy. Coaching from the space where miracles happen. That's exactly what this is about. It's seeing that space, exploring that space, living from that space, coaching from that space. Because when we open up to that, it's kind of amazing what starts to happen. And just knowing it's there opens things up, right? You don't have to do something about it. It's just, once you start to see it, where else would you go? I was reading, I mentioned I was reading this stuff about extreme athletes. And one of the interviews that I read, the guy was saying, the early part, he was a free climber. And he's done some of those insane free climbs, no ropes, on some of the highest mountains in the world. And one of the things that he was saying is he started free climbing because it let him touch the space. And he said he's now spent enough time in the space that he's become much more interested in what to do in it. Like the first part was about finding the space and kind of just noticing the difference between being in the space, not being in the space. So now he's been in the space for a while, and not all the time, but he knows the space. Now he's begun exploring, well, what else is possible from this space? And that's kind of the journey. It's the journey for us, it's the journey with our clients, as we begin to notice there is this space. There is this greater freedom possible. There is this intelligence that when there's a lot of mind in our state, really cool things happen. Life gets pretty cool. It gets pretty spectacular. Well, the first part of the journey is first even seeing that that's there and seeing a little bit about what it is that takes us in and out of it, and learning about the principles and learning about thought and consciousness. And then we start to get a feel for it. And we really start to kind of feel the difference between when we're operating in that space. That's a lot of what I've been hearing from Aaron, is just that, getting really familiar with that, noticing it's different. And then once it's more reliable to us, once it's not such a, for me it was a once every year and a half thing for a while, and then it became a once every 6 months thing, and then it became home. And I'm not always at home, but I know home when I'm there. Well, then it becomes interesting. It's like once you get to that stage, then it's like, wow, what else can I do from home? And I don't know what's after that, because that's where I am right now. It's like, I don't know. There's probably something after that too. But that's the game. If you want to play it, that's what's on offer.